Catch Critic, reviewing for your pleasure.
Hey everybody, welcome to Catch Critic, where we review for your pleasure. I am Ignacy, and joined with me as always is Mr. H.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us.
And today we're going to be discussing Halo Infinite. Now, we are both big-time Halo fans, have been playing it since really Halo 1, but ended up getting pretty much the Xbox 360, both of us, for Halo 3.
Mm-hmm.
And just thought we'd take this moment to discuss really how we feel about the whole Halo Infinite delay and all the news coming out about the drama at the studio.
So yeah, as Ignacy said, we're both big-time Halo fans, and we've been following Halo Infinite as the news came out throughout the years since its announcement, and we're just really here to discuss the state of the game as it is and how we got to the point where it is now delayed for a year.
So I guess we should start back in 2018 when they released the teaser trailer that looked really good, showing they're getting back to like the original trilogy's roots and like back on the ring. I was a little skeptical at first, going like, okay, so there's no Halo 6, they're just soft rebooting, but Halo 5 was bad enough where that kind of made sense. And then 2019, we get the short intro scene, which at this point I'm like, okay, this scene's amazing. This is exactly what I want. It's basically it looks like it's taking place right after Halo 3. He's being woken up. The character in it already has more personality than anyone in Halo 5. And then we get to 2020, where we kind of like, it's okay, the graphics look worse than the 2018 one. That's not a great sign. And then they come up with all these excuses, and I'm sitting there going like, all their excuses make sense. I agree with everything they say, like very opposite of what you would expect I'd say. And then all of a sudden, delayed. And I'm like, okay, so I was looking at these with rose-tinted glasses. Similar experience for you, Mr. H?
Yeah, so going back to the E3 2018 announcement of the game, you have this short cinematic that kind of looks a little bit like gameplay, and that's exciting. Skeptical at first because 4 and 5 are not the best Halos, at least in my opinion. And then we get the next trailer where he's floating in space, he finds him, and that really got me excited. That seemed like they were really starting to understand who Chief is as a character. Just Halo in general. And then we get the newest trailer that dropped where we get actual gameplay, and that's where my heart began to sink a little bit, and you see the graphics are nowhere near as good as anyone expected them to be. And then we get a bunch of memes based on Craig the Brute that we see at the end of that trailer. And the news, I knew about the news of troubles about the game as it was getting closer to launch, and I was definitely like, don't worry about it. They definitely got it. Microsoft's not going to let 343 drop the ball on this one. And I think I was looking at things a little bit with rose-tinted glasses as well. I was a little optimistic when I probably shouldn't have been. But
when you think about it, it's kind of like, this is the Xbox game. When you think of Xbox and their number one game, there's no way anyone doesn't think
nothing
of
comes
Halo.
like, you have Gears of War, and that's great, but
that's
Halo
like done.
is the game. It's their Mario. It's their property. Like, that's the number one thing. That's the console pusher.
Yeah, and I'm just like, there's no way they're releasing a new console. And Halo 5, what was it, 5 years ago, 6 years ago?
I forgot the exact amount of years. I think it was 5 now.
Yeah, does it matter? Because it's kind of like Halo 5 was miserable. Besides the multiplayer was good. But in terms of the solo, the campaign, just one of the worst things I've ever experienced. And it's the same creative director that's going into Halo Infinite. I mean, a lot of the issues with Halo 5 weren't like the way the game looked. It was just really the plot was terrible. And I like, we can get into this a little bit more, because one of my criticisms with like the whole 4, 5, 6 thing was they were taking a lot from the books. Like, especially like 4 made this big push, which the creative director for 5 wasn't there for that when they were doing that. So it's not really his fault, that decision to go into like the book lore. But like, basically the books were complements to the 1 through 3 story. You read them and they added to the story. But anyone who played the games weren't missing out. It wasn't like they couldn't understand what was going on in the games because they didn't read the books.
Yeah, I've never read the books, and I like you follow along with the plots of 1 through 3 excellently. Even 4, like I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I didn't understand.
I mean, 4, you might not have felt like you were missing stuff, but they were definitely like, only because 1, 2, and 3 do a good job of referencing the Forerunners as a people, like the precursors to whatever's going on right now. But like a lot of the things that are going on in 4, like especially if you remember the Spartan Ops, they reference a lot of like the Civil War and the Covenant that you would only know about from the books. So I do not like that at all. Once the books become something you have to read in order to understand what's going on, you've gone too far. And Halo 5 takes that way further, where like the actual Civil War is like in the main story, where and you're this random Oni ops who you'd have to have watched a TV show to understand his backstory, and he becomes a Spartan, and then they're just throwing in some guy from Halo ODST as like, oh, here's a reference to a character that you might have liked in their least popular game. Like, okay.
Yeah, that's definitely a slippery slope when you have to watch or listen to or read other media aside from like the main core media that you want. Like, I'm playing the video game series. Like, yeah, I love this universe, but I'm not going to go and read a book about the series. That's just not the way I enjoy consuming Halo. So I was never interested in the books. And once you get to the point where you apparently are missing backstory like that, like that's just not really acceptable.
I mean, yeah, that's just one of the things I didn't like. So I guess we should be upfront in that I played Halo 5 and you didn't.
Yes.
And I think that's like an example of just like the Halo 4 bad taste in the mouth.
Yeah. So I was holding off on getting a Xbox One X or Xbox One for Halo, and as that game came out, as it released, and I saw reviews and watched gameplay, and I played a little bit at friends' houses, I just was not invested in it anymore. I lost interest. Halo 4 really just left a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't recapture the glory of Halo 3. Even Reach, it didn't get to that level of enjoyment with it, and it was just like I didn't fall out of love with the series. I still wanted to enjoy it, but I didn't see investing all that money in a console and then a game for something that just seemed lackluster.
And let me just come in real quick to defend Halo 4. Just that, like, I know there's like a lot of people that like it and are going to be like, hey, Halo 5's the bad one, not 4. I want to say that I had a similar experience to Halo 4 when I finished it, and I kept saying, I remember I was saying to every one of my friends, just going like, you included, going, oh, Halo 4 will be redeemed by Halo 5. Like, Halo 5 will show if Halo 4 is bad. Like Halo 5 will prove if it is bad or good. And when I said that to everyone, I was really thinking like, oh, Halo 5 is going to be so good that when you look back on the faults of Halo 4, you'll be like, oh, those weren't that bad in hindsight because they were building to something. And I had no idea that Halo 5 was going to be so bad that I would have the same reaction as if it was good. Because I go back and I'm like, Halo 4 is a good game because I'm comparing it to what Halo 5 is. And I go back and I'm like, oh my God, this actually has a story. Like, I did not realize it was going to be like the exact opposite. It was a very weird experience to like have that happen.
Right. And I just want to add that I actually did not dislike Halo 4. It's just that since I'm a fan of the Halo series, that it was just not an enjoyable Halo. As a standalone video game, it was enjoyable, and I had fun with it, and I had fun with the multiplayer. But it doesn't it doesn't live up to what I had in mind for the series. After 3, like the next main installment of the story and multiplayer and all of that, it was not what I thought it was going to be.
And just to finish up like the Halo 4 and 5 talk before we go back into Infinite, I like to compare the way that they were doing Halo 4 and 5 and what was going to be 6 as a very similar experience to the Star Wars 7, 8, and 9. Because like when you look at Halo 4, it is very similar to like the concept of Halo 1 in that you are on a ship. Like in terms of Halo 4, you're even more alone than in Halo 1, but you land on this unknown area alone. You rendezvous with the UNSC again, and then you go and just like stop an evil group from destroying, I guess in Halo 4, it's just the Earth, but in Halo 1, it's kind of the galaxy. So very similar trajectory. Same way that Star Wars, A New Hope was very similar to. No wait, no, I meant like A New Hope was similar to what was it? I don't even remember like what the seventh name was. The new with the big super galaxy. It's the Death Star, but it's much bigger. Like same exact plot. So it's the same thing as that, and I just think it had many of the same troubles where it was like it's like it tried to do the exact same thing and then it tried to change and then it was just like okay, because like when you look at Halo 5, it's like oh, there's two characters. Remember that in Halo 2 there were two characters and it's like yeah, but the Arbiter actually had a plot and so much character development. And I can't remember the name of the Oni Ops that became a Spartan. Like that's the only like I can't remember his name, and I'm a huge Halo fan.
So getting back to Halo Infinite, let's talk a little bit about the trouble they had at the top of the company and the top of the development team.
Yeah, so like the creative director, as we were saying before that, left in 2019 in like August, named Timothy Longo, and he was the creative director for Halo 5, which I don't think that makes it like, oh, Halo 5 was terrible. It's entirely his fault. As we said before, a lot of it had to do with like plot, and he's coming into a game. So I mean, maybe it's possibly potentially his fault, but like what I saw from Halo Infinite, the teasers and stuff, it all looked like they were getting back to its roots. So I don't know if you can blame him, but you can also look at the fact that him leaving, basically, pre-COVID, it was supposed to release like this like Christmas, right, or like late fall.
The new Xbox game, it was supposed to launch right alongside the new Xbox. There wasn't official announced date because the console's date hasn't been announced, but it was a launch title for the Series X.
And the Series X is launching Christmas?
Holiday, yes.
Yeah, so it's launching holiday of this year, and then basically a year before that, the creative director leaves, and everyone's like, "That's not a good sign. What's going on?" And they're like, "Okay, we put in this new creative director." And we're going to release a statement saying there's no creative dilemma inside the studio. And within a month, that next creative director's gone. So it's like, okay, clearly, like, all is not good. And that's problem number one that we see. When the creative directors are leaving on anything, showrunners, games, anything, it's not a good sign, because in big games like these, you need someone at the top leading it, coordinating everything, making sure everything's running the way it needs to go, having one clear vision. And once there's like this turnover, and then you hear these rumors that they're outsourcing more than is normal, even for a AAA title, there's having coordinating issues with the outsourced teams. The marketing department is not listening to the engineering department. These are all things that are coming out that are being reported. And it's just like it's a recipe for disaster, and it all culminates with the 2020 gameplay that we saw, and they had so many good excuses. I was covering for them so much, just going like, they're saying the game's not finished yet. There's going to be so many more graphics updates before then. The team's working hard right now. It's like okay, so they knew the graphics weren't that great. They'll polish them up, and then all of a sudden, boom, game's delayed. It's like okay, so they're just going to continuously lie to everyone. This is not what you want for your flagship game on your new console dropping.
Yeah, so this was definitely a heavy blow for Microsoft as a whole, because there's also partnerships that are involved with AAA games like Halo. So I know there's a partnership with Monster where they were going to release a whole bunch of energy drinks with Master Chief on it, and there were contests to give away Series X's, and all of that partnership has to be thrown out the window. I'm sure they had to lose a ton of stock of supplies and promos, so there's long-lasting business relation damage that can be done with this. So it's not just the video game front, but the marketing front as well. And then, as Ignacy said, whenever there's a creative director leaving, whenever there's someone at the top leaving, vision steering the ship, taking over that job and finishing someone's vision or a united vision that the team was working on is very difficult, and the game could feel disjointed. There's a ton of different issues that can arise, so this was very problematic. And then they did have a bunch of releases saying like there's not going to be ray tracing when the game launches, and it will be updated. And just in case anyone doesn't know, ray tracing is kind of the physics of how light works in a video game, so it looks realistic. So there were going to be a lot of visual problems in this game, and they were aware about it, and they kind of tried to get in front of it, but there was a lot of backlash when the gameplay was shown.
And I guess just to finish with the creative director issues is that the person who they got to fill after Timothy Longo left, her name is Mary Olson, and she was an executive producer at 343. So it wasn't like they got some external person who was like, I'm going to turn this ship around, I'm going to fix all the issues, and we're going to get Halo Infinite out on time. It was somebody who was already in the process. So she had an idea of what was going on there. So if she felt like, okay, I'll try, and then a month in, she's like, no, that's a terrible sign. Like, it's not somebody outside. I guess somebody outside could have the excuse of going like, I didn't know what I was getting into. I don't know that much about it. I was, over optimistic. She was in in the game production. She knew what was going on. So seems like she was just forced into a bad situation. She doesn't even update on her job description as even having that role. So, I mean, I guess we were all as a community optimistic.
Yeah. It's hard not to be optimistic when you're a fan of a series like that. You never want to hear, even when the writing's on the wall, you're just like, hopefully this comes out well. And the gameplay, I think, actually looked fun, and that's really important. But there were clearly major bugs, and the development team would have had to go through massive crunch just to get the game out, and it still probably would have had bugs and graphical issues and lots of difficulties. So,
and I guess for anyone there, could you explain what crunch is?
Yeah, sure. So crunch is pretty much when a movie or a video game are getting close to release and the finished product is not finished, the product's not finished. So basically the graphics team, the animators, whoever's in charge of the various art departments or coding have to work extra hours. They have to stay in the studio overtime, and they basically have a terrible quality of life until the game's released because the product needs to be finished for this release date. Pushing back a product's release date is a huge issue, particularly for something as big as Halo. So this was a major decision on 343 and Microsoft's part, but if they didn't delay it, the teams that worked on this game would have gone through hell.
And I guess we just have to mention that they probably couldn't have even crunched if they wanted to because of COVID-19. Yeah. And that's just another whole. It was basically the final nail in the coffin. Maybe they thought okay, we could work really hard and get it in, and then COVID hit, and it's just okay, maybe it'll go away, and it's just not leaving, and they're just there's no way we can get this game out now.
Yeah, I think they probably would have gone that route had they been in their offices working on the game, but they were kind of left with no choice. And that really shows us how much needed to be done. That the fact that even where it is right now is not good enough to release to consumers, and they can't fix it at home, because there is some stuff they can do at home, just really shows how much trouble this game was in. Pushing it back a full year, not even 6 months, 4 months, there's some problems.
And I guess that should bring us to the next thing, the marketing department. In research for this, I learned, I did not know this, that the marketing department and engineering department were at odds the whole way through. Engineering constantly mentioning you are advertising this game as it is farther ahead than it actually is, and they're just getting mad. They probably knew somewhere going this is going to mean we're going to have to work extreme hours for months to put this game out. And at the top, Microsoft kept going let's go with the marketing department. Let's go with the marketing department, because that's always a good decision when you're making a game. The marketing department.
It's a bit complex. I definitely agree they shouldn't have done that, but it's a launch title for a new console, and they need this to be perfect. So I know where it's coming from, but it's not the right route to take for sure.
I mean, what they put out in terms of marketing up until the 2020 gameplay was really good. It got everyone invested. You think that Microsoft would be okay, this is our main focus. They should have been in constant conversations. I wish I could hear, I tried to research what Timothy Longo said about leaving. It was hard to get a nice statement of the reasons he was leaving. I guess in that industry you never want to badmouth at all. You'll probably never get another gig, but it's just very why would he leave when the game's close to supposed to be close to finished?
I mean, I don't think that's something we'll ever know. Again, they said it wasn't anything to do with the game itself, but I find that a little hard to believe. What we'll never know. Well, it's
You're
really
the creative director on Halo Infinite, and you just were the only thing you did there was creative director for Halo 5, and it was like a monstrous disaster. And you have to like soft reboot, which turned out it's a hard reboot. Let's call it what it is. You have to hard reboot the series from 3 in order to just put out another game, and you don't want to finish that. Like that's weird in my view. It's like you have a chance to prove yourself that you're gonna like, now you have like no excuse. You're in the Halo like franchise. You should know everything you need to know in order to put out this game. You're hard rebooting, so you don't have to care about Halo 4 or Halo 5 anymore. And you're making the statement of you're going back to your roots. And we see that it looked like they were doing that. And they also were talking about how like this was supposed to be like the Halo game, and they were just going to update it. Like this is the new thing. Like they were going to update it with new campaigns and stuff.
Yeah, this is supposed to be a 10-year long game, games of service kind of game. And when someone jumps ship like that close to launch, it's definitely unnerving. I think it's probably he knew the game wasn't going to be ready, and he didn't want that to fall on his head. He didn't want that as I'm responsible for this.
I think that looks worse. I'm just like you got to captain goes down with the ship. You can't just jump and leave everybody else there.
I agree.
That like maybe he had a really good reason. Maybe Microsoft was making his job a living hell. But like he definitely can't say that. No one's going to hire them if he's going to talk bad about like.
All we can do is speculate, because this is not something that I think is ever really going to come to light. The point is, we are here at this point where now we're a year away from this game. It's the console does not have a Halo to launch with, and we're kind of just, the fans are just kind of left waiting.
I mean, yeah, like I obviously will wait an extra year for a much better game. I'll always do that because I'm not going to get a PlayStation anyway. Like I'm probably wasn't even going to get a new system, and like I'll just wait to see if Halo's good and then get the Xbox Series X. I've always been a Nintendo person, and I made the switch to Xbox, or like it wasn't really a switch. I just now also got Xbox because of Halo 3 really. And then I've just kind of stuck with Nintendo and Xbox, and I always have like one or two friends who have a PlayStation, and you know, they play at my place, I play at their place, and then you kind of like get all the games. I'm not going to buy 3 systems.
So I was someone who had usually 3 systems up until the 360 era, where I skipped the PS3. And then I skipped this newest console generation, excluding the Switch. But yeah, I was looking forward to getting back into either Xbox or PlayStation, and Halo was a huge boon towards me getting an Xbox. And I, again, enjoyed the gameplay that they saw. And I'm going to wait a year. I'm not getting either of them. And I'm going to see how this game launches and what it looks like. And I think from what I saw and the fact that they were willing to say, we need a full year, that this is going to be a good game in the end.
I mean, it definitely had to have been like a decision. Like, I'm glad that they finally woke up and were like, we can't put this game out. But it's still strange to me. I don't think I think most of the community are like, here we go, 343 again. I mean, like, people at Bungie, like, maybe they're laughing a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, they have no reason to laugh with the Destiny 2.
Not even that. I mean, I'm sure those people still, like, have a part of Halo in their hearts. But the thing is that it's just, I think, a bad situation for everyone, except for Sony, of course. But no one wanted to be here. We wanted this game to be great on launch. But if they're willing to take that risk of not having Halo at launch and taking a full year to make it good, this has to be the Halo game, like the Halo game. If this game is not excellent, the series, the franchise
no
is
pressure. Dead
in the water.
And I guess that's like, I have like a good question. Like, what do you want to see that will make this game good for you?
That's difficult. I mean, well, first, just because we've been talking about it, the graphics definitely need to be improved. But I just want a simplistic, not overly simplistic, but I don't need loadouts in my campaign and multiplayer. I don't need jetpacks and sprinting. There's going to be the grappling hook, but I think that's necessary given how big the map and open world the campaign is probably going to be. I'm not in love with it, but it seems necessary because parts of that map is super vertical. And
but you could come up with a space thing. Like, I don't understand why he's using like caveman technology when He has
Well, it's not
jetpack on
caveman
his back.
technology.
I mean,
The
just
thing that bothers, well, the jetpack's just kind of like counter to like how Halo plays as shooter, I feel.
I'm not arguing for the jetpack, but I'm saying like think about like all the technology, like hard light shield. Wouldn't it have been cool like if he had like he shot like a hard light like little thing into something and then like repelled on like a kind of like invisible-esque energy wire or something like translucent, something like that.
That's a visual thing. That's basically a grappling hook.
I mean, yeah, but like at least like I'm just looking at this guy shoot like a claw, like he's freaking Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. He's clawing people, and I'm like, what's going on? Like
the weird thing.
When does Chief carry a grappling hook?
Not the worst thing. The weird thing about the grappling hook is that when he launches it at a rock or something, he pulls himself to the rock. But if he hits an enemy with it, he pulls himself to the enemy. And Master Chief weighs like a ton in that suit. The enemy should be flying at Chief. Like the physics with the grappling hook is a bit odd to me. Like when it hits an elite, for instance, I think it shows in the trailer.
I mean, it's just like they were using it a lot in that trailer, and I was just like, I'm never gonna use it. And I know like if it's a big part the way that they're showing it, then it's like now I have to use it when I'd rather never.
Have to use it. There's no
just give me a gun and let me shoot things. Like,
I mean, I think it's mainly for terrain traversal. Like that's how I saw the grappling hook. But regardless, yeah, I just want kind of a return to form of basically Halo 3. I want fun, interesting multiplayer maps, and I want a more streamlined single player, just a simplistic shooter. And it's not overly simplistic. I don't mean to like knock on the gameplay, but it's not a crazy game. There's not 1,000 loadouts you have to pick from. I don't want complex decisions on like if I die I respawn with this, or like I just want a return to form.
Yeah, I think we all do. I'm kind of thinking like, okay, so they're gonna put out new stuff. It's like give me one campaign and like revolutionize that old Spartan Ops thing, except instead of it being like Spartan Ops, it's like a free roam world thing. You can do the campaign, or you can go and like do different missions that are like that they put out, and it's not like a Destiny thing where you get drops or anything. It's just like you're on the ring, and they come up with like different things that you can do with friends on the ring, things like that. I don't know.
If there's drops, this is going to be the strangest game ever. I really don't think there's going to be
there's no drops. I'm just just another jab at Destiny.
Yeah.
It's just to me like. They're saying that like if you're going to be in this open world and you're going to do these things, and I'm thinking like as you said, like Craig the Chieftain, like he's not. I really don't think you can rally around any villain. Like no villain's going to be good enough.
I don't think he's going to be the main villain. I think there's going to be like you're fighting him for like a third of the campaign, and then there's something that like gets revealed. That's crazy.
I mean, it's
there's
just
no
the
way
remnants
the main
of it's just the remnants of the Covenant, or like I hopefully they're not doing too much book shit because I don't like any of that. But it's kind of like there was a civil war going on with the elites, and they kind of just brought up like they did that in Halo 4, and we all saw how great everyone cared about that. I know that there's probably a lot of people listening who are like, that was the best part of Halo 4 and 5, and I was like, I guess, but maybe in terms of gameplay, but not in story. It's just not believable at this point that like half the Covenant under like a fractured leadership with like against the humans who already kind of beat them, and teaming up with the other half of the elites led by the Arbiter, like you have no chance, and no one like it's not believable.
So should we just talk about if we think that do you think that I kind of touched upon it, I suppose. Do you think the delay is ultimately a good thing?
Yes. I mean, as I said before the delay, I was giving them every benefit of the doubt just because I really, really wanted Halo to be good, that I was just going to delude myself and be like, it'll be fine. And then when the delay came, it was like such a sigh of relief going like, it was never going to be fine.
Yeah. I guess I said it before, when you're a fan of something, you want it to be great, and you're going to do mental gymnastics if you have to kind of convince yourself, unless the writing's like actually on the wall.
It's also like, I think it kind of has to be like the last Halo, at least in terms of like Chief. And even really like, if you're going to do more Halo games, they have to be like during the war, like other stories in the war, because like just, I hate it when you win, like you beat the big bad guys, you won the war, and then they're just like, and here's another villain.
Yeah,
and
it
here's
gets to
another,
like
Gears of
that
War,
cartoon villain of the week kind of trope where it's just like we're doing the same shit every game, like every single game, it's the same thing except new villain.
It just reminds me of Gears of War, where it's just like, you defeated the Locust. Next game, you didn't defeat the Locust. You defeated the Locust. Next game, you didn't defeat. It's just like always, over and over. And I'm sick of it. Like, I know that's just another
fatigue that happens.
And then like Halo going like, oh, you beat the Covenant, and now the Forerunners. And it's just like, didn't the Forerunners go extinct a while ago? They're in robot bodies. Okay, are they led by someone who's not a robot? Yes. Okay, who is he? He was alive during the Forerunner stuff. How? He was a prisoner, so the only one who survived the Forerunner stuff was the bad guy. Oh, okay, that doesn't make sense at all, but I could keep going over and over about how every story decision was just like forced in order to create a plot. Like, we need the bad guy so that there can be something to do.
Yeah. So
I don't want that in Infinite is my final point.
All right, so let's try to end this on a high note. Do you think it's going to be a good game?
I want to be optimistic again, but it's just like they need someone at the top who understands the series, like, now more than ever. Like, especially since they're returning to roots, someone needs to like take control and be like, this is what the game is, this is what we're doing. They already have to have such an idea with close to being finished. The graphics is a must just because it's just something you need with your flagship game. Like, if you're putting this out on the new system and all like freaking like Nintendo's beating you in realistic graphics, it's like they're not even trying to do that and they're beating you is what I'm trying to say with that, not shitting on Nintendo.
So I just want to touch on one more thing I didn't talk about, in that this game is releasing both for the Xbox One X and the Series X. So that's definitely led to some problems.
I thought that they're done with the One X.
Mm-mm.
Really? They're still doing that?
Yeah, this is launching on both. So that's probably what led to a lot of these conflicts.
Well, yeah, we're pretty much at the end of this discussion, and like that revelation. Okay, no, I'm a little less hopeful just because whenever I don't understand this drive to let's put our flagship game on both the old system and the new system. It's like, get people to buy your new system. Why are you encouraging people to keep the old system?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a whole discussion for another time.
Now that it's a year delay, like I don't even know what's coming out for the Xbox Series X.
We'll see if now that it's a year out, if it still launches for the Xbox One X.
It's just like Microsoft
I would be skeptical. I'm skeptical of it now, but we'll see. I mean, they've already put the work into making it work for the Xbox One, so.
I mean, I guess we could have a whole nother discussion just on like Xbox Game Pass, which seems where they're going to go with this. So like, I guess
that's Microsoft's whole market now.
Yeah,
so.
like they've always wanted to like finally make like everything all in one inclusive. So they're going to put out the Xbox Series X. They're going to make it so that like your live is now Game Pass, which I'm all for. It's like, okay, I'm paying the same thing and now I have access to all these games. Yeah. That's very good. And then they're going to put out the like Halo a year later. And if it's going to be for both systems, it's just, it's not good. But like from what I read, it's easier to scale graphics up than to bring them down. Mm-hmm. So if they're making it, like they probably were always making it for the intention of like, let's make it for the one. And then when we get the specs for Halo for the Xbox Series X, we'll scale it up for that one. So like if that was always their plan, I think they could do it. So that's one positive note. Plan. Yeah. I just like, if they don't do something quick, PlayStation is gonna like pile drive them into the dirt.
Yeah. I mean,
and you can quote me on that.
Will do. But PlayStation also has some things with the only real launch title that they have right now is Spider-Man's. I don't want to call it a sequel because I don't think it's a full sequel, but that game sold great.
They have like two going. They have like a half sequel and then a full sequel. They're doing one with like Miles and then doing a true sequel. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they definitely have the upper hand right now. We'll see what happens with system prices and all that. But that's, again, a kind of different discussion. We're here for Halo right now.
I mean, yeah, but when you think about it, like with all the issues that they had on the Xbox One release and PlayStation, like just beating them in the marketing department, for them to like botch this up so hard.
Yeah,
it's actually
Microsoft
impressive.
Shot themselves in the foot again. This is actually, I think, not as bad as the other console release, but this is pretty miserable.
I mean, I actually think it's worse because I was happy for the Xbox One. I didn't really care about any of like the real issues they had. I'm actually struggling to think of a game that's releasing with the Xbox Series X. I can't think of one other.
There's no big title. Unless Microsoft has something in their pocket that they've been hiding, which I don't think they do because we're so close to launch. We'll have to see. The thing that they're going to get Sony on, if anything, is going to be pricing. But we'll see.
All right. I guess that brings us to the end of this. I thought it was like a second I felt optimistic about Halo Infinite, and I don't know. I blacked out at the end, and I'm filled with a sense of dread, a foreboding, if you will. So maybe the listeners can help. Write in the comments something good, something nice about Halo. You know what? Microsoft needs your money. Just send them a check with like your last
thoughts and prayers.
Give them your COVID money. Mm-hmm. Give them your unemployment. They need it now more than ever.
Mm-hmm. So I gotta go take Ignacy to the hospital because he's starting to black out apparently. But thank you for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
Well, that brings us to the end of the video, and let's not forget our sponsors.
How could we?
Because they're not our sponsors, so they're forgettable because we don't have any.
That's true. That is true.
This video is specifically not brought to you by Animal Crackers. They're delicious. I love them, no matter the brand, but they do not support us, and I would never wish for them to.
Yeah, and on that topic, Entenmann's as well. They do not sponsor us, and we don't want them to either.
Oh, it's so delicious. It's also brought to you by Classic Collector Paintings. Find them anywhere on Amazon for unaffordable prices.
And last but not least, let's mention Monkey Paws. We are sponsored by Monkey Paws.
They're dangerous, they're ruining the cities, and crime is up. Good night, everybody.